Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated economist here. Canada recently sold $3 billion worth of US dollar denominated bonds. Now, what I found interesting about this is that this isn't the first time either. They did it last year for the same amount. Now, but what I did find interesting is that when you look around the world and corporations or nations that sell dollar denominated bonds, they're generally doing it because they get a better interest rate. So if they promise to pay back in US dollars, the lenders, the people who are buying those bonds, are willing to give them a better interest rate than if they were to sell it in their own local currency. So that's generally why nations or corporations would do it. It's because they get the better interest rate from it. Now, what ends up happening is things like what we experienced with the TWU group. Now, we did a video on this one, where TWU had taken out a lot of dollar-denominated debt, meaning that they sold these bonds promising to pay back in US dollars. But then, over the course of time, as the bonds began to mature, the currency had weakened to the US dollar, meaning that they had to come up with ever more increasing amounts of their own local currency in order to get the dollars to pay back those bonds. And during China's slowdown, that became incredibly difficult for them, and they ended up defaulting on those bonds. So now I look over here at the Canada deal, what those guys just did, because they sold $3 billion worth of these US dollar denominated bonds that are due in 5 years at a higher interest rate than their local 5-year treasury would sell for, the Canadian equivalent 5-year bond. And over in the US, the 5-year bond has a lesser interest rate. So in order to attract the investor to basically buy these dollar-denominated bonds from them, they had to promise to pay back a higher interest rate. Now, this got me thinking. It was just like, well, is this going to be a really good deal for Canada or not? Now, I understand it's a pretty small number considering, how big the bond market is, $3 billion. And it could be just because they want to diversify, their foreign reserves. But I got to thinking about the deal in general, because if you think about this, Canada just sold bonds at a higher interest rate than their own local bond, their own local 5-year bond sells for. If the dollar continues to strengthen, not only will Canada have to come up with ever more increasing amounts of their local currency in order to get the dollars to pay back those bonds, but then they're also paying it back at a higher interest rate. It doesn't sound like it was a really good deal for Canada. I don't know. Uneducated economist. You guys let me know.